Time's up, Admiral.
Here it comes.
Chevron 1, loaded.
For my ally is the Force, and the powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow.
You failed your eyes. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Cry hammer, and let's set the tongues of war.
Chevron 2 is loaded.
Conan, what is best in life? Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, to hear the lamentation of your women.
It's all in the reflexes.
Well, also said you're heavy into martial arts, Tai Chi and all that killer stuff. I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
Chevron 3 encoded.
And somebody ought to belt you in the mouth. But I won't. I won't. The hell I will.
Chevron 4 encoded.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Chevron 5 encoded.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Chevron 6 encoded.
Not while you can, little boy.
Great Scott.
Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
You shall not pass!
I thought I'd die fighting side by side with Al.
What about side by side with a friend?
A day may come when the courage of men fails, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day.
Chevron 7 is locked.
Hail and howdy, everybody. Welcome back. Saturday Night Driving. We took the weekend off last week, but we're back to celebrate real Star Wars. Just say that again, real Star Wars, because May the 4th was not a real holiday. It's a made-up Disney holiday. But we're not here to do that. We're not going to talk about that conversation. We're going to celebrate George Lucas' Star Wars. And he's back from wandering around out there, feeling, I guess, lonely without me, I hope, because I missed you, Jed. How are you, Jed? How you doing? Welcome back.
I'm doing great. I'm doing a lot better than I could be right now because, yes, Doctor Who came out today, and I haven't watched it, and I have no intentions of watching it. So I'm doing better than I could, and most of you guys already know this, but the reason I skipped last week is another reason I'm in a good mood. I actually got engaged last week, so I was taking an engagement trip last week to celebrate, and that's why I wasn't here for that show. So, yeah, I'm in a good mood, and that'll get me through talking about this movie, hopefully.
You guys know how it is. You guys know, hey, we're going to have fun here. And we're joined by two of our friends, Clifton 3D. We've streamed together, but first time on the channel. Welcome. How you doing, Clifton?
Hello there. I'm doing all right. I hope everyone else is doing all right, too, and I'm looking forward to this. I was 9 years old when this movie came out, and yeah, the tapes that I watched of the original trilogy, they were worn out at that point.
And her other half has been on this show several times, but Melee K, your first time on this show. Welcome. How are you today?
Well, thank you. I'm very pumped to talk about Phantom Menace. Me, a fan? What? No way.
No,
not at all.
No.
Super excited to be here. I actually watched this movie in theaters again a few days ago, so I'm fresh and ready for it.
I was there in the theater when it came out for the very first time. I've told the story. I'm going to tell again because it's appropriate this day. It was that hot summer day when it came out, and we were all home from college for that year, and I was elected to be the one to go get the tickets. And I was supposed to have a partner, my friend, who I call in the morning and say, dude, you going to pick me up? He says, no. What? Huh? He's half asleep. He says, I'll see you there later. I go, okay, fine. I go there. Now, I had never sat to get tickets before in my life. First time. I went unprepared. I just brought a book to read. Didn't bring shade, didn't bring water, didn't bring food. I just went there thinking, buddy's going to show up. He'll rest me. I'll go out there. I'll get stuff. No, hours and hours and hours go by. I'm sitting there in the sun. I'm getting sunburned. It was murder. And then finally, one of our friends show up and she says, Adam, you're here all by yourself? I'm like, Allegra, is that you? You're a goddess. You're an angel. She brought an umbrella. She brought some water. And then my buddy shows up, sitting grin on his face, going, "Nee." And I realized, and because he knows he fucked up. He knows he left me there to die in the sun. And then slowly everybody starts to show up. And we went to the midnight showing of that. And of course, I was lobster red that day. It was miserable, but we had fun. A good time. So Phantom Menace has a special place in my heart. It's the first movie I waited in line for in terms of that. But after that, I still showed up for every other one of the prequel trilogies. Back then with various opinions and feelings, but still, as I was telling the guys before we got started, my opinions have softened over the years. They've softened. I'm not as angry. And I was never a prequel hater. I just I expected it to be different. One of those things, Jed. I sense your...
Are you guys ready for me to tell my Phantom Menace theater story?
Yeah.
I wasn't born yet. Yeah. The movie came out a few months before I was born, so I did not watch this in theater. The first Star Wars movie I saw in the theaters was Force Awakens. God. And I did wait in line for that one. Not as bad as what you're talking about, but it was pretty intense waiting for that movie.
Your child. Anyway, so your first experiences then when you see Phantom Menace. I guess that's a good place to start because this movie's been talked to death over and over again. Let's just kind of talk about our experiences. Then we'll just creep in and talk about it. So, Jed, when you first saw it, though, what was your experience when you first saw it? Was there any expectations? And you could have had the same level of expectations I had where we all thought it was going to be something different and it ended up being something was. But how did you feel when you first saw it?
Well, growing up, we did have the VHSs for all 6 movies, so I don't remember the first time I saw Phantom Menace, but it was so young that I never had any expectations for the movies, at least in my early memories of watching. I remember enjoying it as a kid, but I was always even as a kid, I knew the original trilogy was leaps and bounds superior. And Revenge of the Sith is the only one that I wasn't allowed to watch. I didn't watch that till I was an adult because it was PG-13. I read the novelization though when I was.
I've heard it's better. I've heard it's better than the movie.
Good. I remember liking it when I was a kid. I haven't read it since then, but that was how I finished the story, was with the novelization. But yeah, the prequels were always fun to me as a kid, but even as a kid, I knew they weren't as grandiose and as superior as the original. But no, I always enjoyed this movie as a kid. I haven't seen it since Rise of Skywalker came out. I did a 9-movie marathon for that one to brace myself for 9. I needed some prep with some good Star Wars to shield myself against how bad that movie was going to be. But yeah, it's been a long time, and my opinions have definitely changed even in the last 5 years since I last saw this film. Definitely for the worse.
All right, so Kate, you just saw it last week, right? You and James went there, and comparing to your original viewing of it, how does it feel all this time later?
I'm in a unique spot because a lot of Star Wars fans started with 4. Phantom Menace was actually my first Star Wars film.
Oh,
so
I didn't live in then, huh?
Yeah, I did not live in a universe where the prequels didn't exist in my brain. That was where I started. So I know a lot of purists for the original trilogy would shake their head at me because there are people who experience that without it. And yeah, I mean, I loved that film as a kid. Of course, I didn't really understand much of what was going on, but I was like, oh, yay, they're having fun. This is great. Going into the theater, 25 years later, it was emotional, I felt. And there were definitely certain beats of the story where I sat on them a bit more. So I came in with a huge bias going into that because it was like, I watched as a kid and I was like, oh yeah, this is fun. I felt like I watched it again going, yeah, I really do love this movie. So it just empowered my love for it.
Clifton, you've got an interesting story attached to this, don't you? If I remember, you told me correctly, right? And with your experiences with it?
Well, I mean, so yeah, as I already said, I was 9 years old when the movie came out in theaters, and we had just moved to Germany in 1999. So, no friends yet. And it's kind of funny, that's the way I was introduced to Star Wars. We had to move within the States. And the little corner store in town had those movies to rent out, the original trilogy, and that's where I started. And then here, another move So the combination, yeah, just. But going to the theater in Germany, and this was, this is where I live is around Ramstein Air Force Base. It's around Kaiserslautern military. So there are a lot of Americans here. So this theater, they actually did play movies in English. Thank God. I wouldn't have understood a word at that time. But yeah, just going in there, the first Star Wars movie in theaters for me was it was huge, and just, yeah, absolute. 9 years old, I was the same age as Anakin, basically, and it was just like, yes, I want to be a Jedi too. Like, yes, I want to pod race. Awesome.
I mean, you go back to this time though, the marketing blitz for Phantom Menace back in '99, it was nuts. Fast food merch, actual merch, the video games coming out. I mean, they had an even post, all kinds of stuff. There it is. I mean, Kay and James, they have tons of collectibles back there. You can keep rolling them out. See, I got nothing anymore. All my shit's gone. I got nothing left. What is that?
I've got too many moves. Yeah.
This
What
is
is
like
that
those KFC toys where it shows like scenes from the movie.
Oh,
so I have
wow.
Coruscant. I have Tatooine. I actually have every single toy that came out through like KFC, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut.
Damn.
Sealed. So I have like some that are open, and I have a full set that's sealed too.
Yeah, it was insane because it was a fever pitch. I remember when the trailer came out, and being the Star Wars guy where I am, I am in the middle of the EU. The new Jedi Order arc had just started, and I'm caught up in everything. And I just sat there watching this trailer over and over again, listening to the beats, understanding what we're seeing Darth Maul with the double lightsaber for the first time in live action. We'd already seen double lightsabers in the comics at this point, but it was intense. And we're trying to figure out what's this going to be about. And then we get into it. And let's start with the movie discussion then. We'll start with the beginning. It was first of all, now I had gone to see the special editions in the theater, so I had, as an adult, seen the crawl appear and do this, but it was the first time seeing one where I didn't know the words by heart, and to see it begin and understand, okay, this is a new setting, new story, and then we go in, and it's an interesting way for the movie to start because we've started in medias res with the New Hope, things happening, but in this one, it's kind of the beginning of the tale where we're starting at Obi-Wan's beginning. We get introduced to Qui-Gon Jinn, and I got to say, no matter what, Liam Neeson gives a good performance overall. He gives his, I use this term a lot, gravitas. A lot of movies will work to an extent because you put a lead actor and actress in there who has gravitas, and Liam Neeson has gravitas. And also, I will say this, we'll come back to later, Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor get, and also I'll say for later movies, Hayden Christensen, they get the massive respect for me for going through the choreography work, for the hours and hours, days, months, weeks they put into making sure they could keep up with Ray Park. That is impressive because I'm very careful. There's no swap out of stunt doubles. There's no CGIing a face like they had with Christopher Lee, who was an old man in Attack of the Clones.
He has a very good excuse.
Yes. Yeah. So, but they're there. They're doing the work. They're making the effort. And I appreciate that because it allows us to get drawn in. And I feel as though when this movie starts, and then I'll open to you guys, we're instantly drawn in. Because here we got Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan when they pull their hoods down and they get introduced and something's going on. And then immediately the action begins. You get that classic Star Wars John Williams theme, lightsabers out, and we're seeing Jedi at work. And it was a thrill. And it still is a thrill because these are the high points of the movie for me. So when you guys got into it, and Kay, we'll start with you. When you start with this movie, are you instantly drawn in immediately, or is it taking a little bit of time to rev up for you?
I would say the way that this film starts, you're instantly drawn in because the first thing you pretty much see is those two, and you're like, what's going on? Why are they here? And within a few seconds, they answer that question. So I thought the pace, actually, of the first few scenes was great, and it was really easy to get into Star Wars just from that alone. I think when you get slowly into the film later, that's when it starts to draw out a little bit more, and you might have more trouble. But definitely the first scene pulls you in. 100%.
I would say, in general, Jed, the first act, which is, I would say, the arrival at Naboo and leaving Naboo, all that stuff, it is actually a solid first act because all the proper, with the exception of Anakin, all the proper players are introduced, and everybody seems to fill their role and the expectation of what I want to see from a Jedi Master and Apprentice. The little bit we get of Padme here and there, and of course, right away, Palpatine as Sidious. At that point, it's the first time we hear the word, we hear his Darth title ever, Sidious. So how do you, and I know you're going to say things as we go forward because this is you. How do you feel with that first act as an introduction overall to the movie?
Well, like I said, it's been a very long time since I last watched this film, and the way I enjoy movies has changed a lot over that period of time. I've definitely got more critical as I become a writer myself, and I'm able to recognize things that I didn't as a kid. So a lot of this criticism isn't stuff that I saw as a kid. I enjoyed this movie as a kid, but I only really enjoy the third act of this movie now in my recent watch through as of last night. And of course, Duel of the Fates is one of the most epic things ever, especially the soundtrack. But that whole fight scene, I can't find a flaw in that part of the film, but we'll get to that part. But for the beginning, I found pretty much every performance incredibly wooden. Like people were told emotions don't exist in this galaxy, kind of like how George Lucas told what's her bucket Carrie Fisher that they don't wear panties in space back in A New Hope. It's just, I feel like
we're thankful for that. We're thankful for that.
I don't know if that's true. I've just heard that so many times that I accept it as my headcanon that he actually did tell her that. But yeah, a lot of the performances were wooden and not a whole lot of engaging stuff happened. So I found myself incredibly bored last night when I watched it. And I knew the movie though entirely. Like I was quoting along with it. I've watched this enough as a kid that I even knew the sound effects, the pitch. I know a movie well, not when I can quote the lines, because I have a pretty good memory, so I can do that at the second or third time watching the film. But when I can get their inflections right and just that type of stuff, that's when I know I've really seen a movie, and I can absolutely do it with this one. So there's still nostalgia associated with this film, but I don't believe the first act is particularly well written. It's a lot of I won't call it a fool's plot like something like Fallout. It's very much like things just are happening. Like it's got the same momentum. It's just doing what it's doing. And I don't feel like any characters are making very unique decisions. I'm not feeling any character development. It's just people are doing the most obvious thing to do here. Like I'm not getting a sense of these people. And it's the film out of the 6 that I consider cartoonish. I find this film incredibly cartoonish.
I would say the middle act, the second act has the most of that in there.
It just everything was Sidious. Just the way I don't know what was wrong with it. I just laugh. It is so cartoonish. He nailed it in Revenge of the Sith. I think his makeup's messed up in Revenge of the Sith, but he has a much better Sidious performance in that one. In this one, it's just I want to laugh every time he's on screen. Like it feels like a Phineas and Ferb. That's what I was thinking the whole time when the general shows up to the platypus and he's just like, we're gonna do this. It felt so cartoonish that I couldn't take any of his scenes seriously. And so I couldn't take the threat seriously. And I don't know, this film just felt cartoonish this time watching through it, and that not a whole lot of direction was in it. It was just, hey, things are happening pretty places. CGI is pretty good for the 90s, really good for the 90s. Of course, ILM is incredible.
Well, that was they pioneered this shit at that point. This is them basically saying, okay, we just invented all this stuff. We are now going to try and run with it, and we're going to set the bar for making what it is going forward.
I think it has better CGI than the second one. The second one, it kind of falls into a Hobbit situation for me where they went too far before they were ready. Like the Hobbit, they had the frame rate all messed up, and that was ruining their CGI. But the second one just looks awful to me. This one looks a lot better, in my opinion, from a CGI perspective.
As far as Sidious goes, I'm on the opposite end. I like it that now this is coming from, as Kay put it, someone who knows this going in. I know who Palpatine is. You go and read it. You know from the moment he appears that's Emperor Palpatine, or what will be Emperor Palpatine. Of course, as I said, we would first be treated to his Sith name Sidious here, but I love it because he's ham. The ham is good to me. The ham is good. It's tasty. It's got that right bit of sweetness and salt to it that I like. And he's just giving it his all, being evil. Yet then when he reappears later as as Sheev, regular Sheev Palpatine. Oh, what's going on? It's that I like the dynamic. I thought it worked really well.
I love his Sheev performance.
Yeah.
His actual Palpatine performance, I think, is very strong. But a big thing I thought of when watching this film is something that I've been noticing for years within me. I just am generally starting to care less about Star Wars. Like, I'm definitely going towards a very different type of audience member. So that might be part of it as well. That, like you're saying, this
apathy is setting in finally.
Not necessarily. It's not apathy from the sequel.
Okay.
That's not what I'm talking about. In and of just the original 6, like how you're talking about this, it is what the film is intending to be. The campy nature of it. Campy doesn't work for me anymore like it used to as a kid. So Star Wars just as a brand doesn't appeal to me like it used to. That's why as I grow up, I get way more into Star Trek. And
understandable.
Like the shift is happening where Star Wars just doesn't move the needle for me like it used to.
You see, I get the thrill every time. The thrill is still there. I mean, Clifton, the first act, I think, as good as I think it started is, there is one thing that is plagued, and it plagues the whole movie: Jar Jar Binks. Is anybody going to defend Jar Jar Binks here? Let's get that out of the way now. No. Clifton, are you going to defend Jar Jar?
To some degree, I can, but it would take a lot.
I mean, okay, really, he is. It's over the top, and it does get on my nerves from time to time. In general, I don't think the character of Jar Jar Binks is horrible, not as bad as people put it sometimes. And after many years, and Legittus says it, Darth Jar Jar, I kind of like that. I kind of like that.
We are not perpetuating that bullshit thing they've been trying to push for over a decade.
No. I know it's not, I know it's not canon. I like the idea though.
I do as well. I think it would have improved Phantom Menace significantly if he had been on the second one.
Have you seen
it made sense. It's like he was intentionally being an idiot. He was intentionally being this nonsense creature. Like it was strategic instead of just
have you seen the new Star Wars Lego trailer?
Yes, I've worked hard to ignore it because I don't like feeding this beast at all. I do not like it. When I was first told to me like 10 years ago by a buddy, he's like, "Yeah, have you heard the Darth Jar Jar thing?" What do you mean Darth Jar Jar thing? So yeah, his lips are always moving. With this, I'm like, no, you take that shit, you leave it on the curb when you walked in this door. I don't want to hear this at all. No.
Actually, while we're on the topic of Jar Jar Binks, I should bring this up because again, I saw this in theater a few days ago. I was surprised the audience was laughing at Jar Jar scenes. People were reacting well to Jar Jar in the theater that I was in. Like every time he was on screen and he'd do something dumb, people would crack up laughing. And that was the main reaction you got from the film, besides, the obvious like excitement when it first started, the crawl, and of course the end. But the main thing I took away from watching in the theater is that people actually found Jar Jar really funny. And it wasn't like a groaning laugh or, where people
got a chance to get used to it. They knew what to expect.
Yes, people were actually enjoying Jar Jar.
As a kid, as a 9-year-old, I laughed. And it was like only years later when I was like, ugh, this character is so annoying.
Here's the thing. I listen. What we say now has nothing to do with Ahmed Best. Let's also put that aside and get that out of the way before some assholes try and say, "Oh, you guys are attacking Ahmed Best." First of all, none of us ever attacked Ahmed Best. It was the media that attacked Ahmed Best and attacked Jake Lloyd. None of us did. We're talking about the character. I think for me, the biggest problem with Jar Jar is his dialogue. Okie day.
I think that's the biggest problem with these movies is the dialogue.
Okay. Yes and no. Some of it depends on who's doing it, and it depends on the moments of the movie. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't work in Jar Jar in episode 1. And I will say, as a cheat now for next week, a lot of Hayden's Anakin dialogue in Attack of the Clones doesn't work that well either. It's a little rough.
It's so cringe.
And I think in this terms also, and Jed, I will give you this point. Natalie Portman's Padme performance in this movie is very stiff, especially when she's in Queen Amidala mode.
Kira does better as Queen Amidala with the makeup and whatnot.
Yeah. Padme when when Natalie Portman's in Amidala mode, full get
Mhm.
up, her fake royalness is I have a hard time buying it. It feels different when she's Padme. It's fine. She's not
Yeah.
trying
I
too hard. Whatever direction George Lucas gave her, it didn't work when she went to Queen mode.
I actually have a question about Queen Amidala that you'd
Okay.
probably be able to answer. Even as a teenager, not as a kid, obviously, as a teenager, it baffled me that she would use Padme as her name when she was being the handmaiden, because that's her real name as far as you know. Padme Amidala is what she's called through the rest of the trilogy. If you're going undercover to let your decoy run things for your own safety, why would you still use at least your real first name? Because anyone who's in the court would be like, Padme, that's weird.
Well,
and then look at her closer and
I think in the court
use a fake name.
I think it was only done in close confines with people around her, and because remember, the Queen of Naboo is an elected queen. It's kind of
Mhm. So people would be familiar with her
so
name.
I don't I don't know the lore of if her first name is out there in prior to
Can't
that.
imagine why it
'Cause
wouldn't be.
I don't know. But then again, when she's referred to Padme, she's in close confines with people who are either in the know or people who wouldn't be in the know at all. Foreigners, because let's be honest, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, they're foreigners. They don't know Naboo
They were
culture.
sent to negotiate for a planet. I feel like they would have basic knowledge of
Maybe
this planet.
Qui-Gon, but well, they didn't have any knowledge of the Gungans, so I don't think they were as versed as maybe
No,
they should
well,
have been.
they didn't know the inner workings. They knew of
Yeah.
Gungans, but yeah, that's an undercover society. That's fine.
Yeah,
But the
yeah.
Queen Amidala represents her planet. You're negotiating on her behalf, really.
Well, all right. Here's the thing, though. Here's what I'm going to say. That I think it's a lie in plain sight for the people who are there, and people might know because remember when in Act 3, beginning Act 3, when Anakin goes to say goodbye to her, and the guard says he's here to say goodbye to Padme. I think everybody in the room knows that it's Padme Amidala, and that's just for anybody outward listening. That it's kind of it's a ruse only for people who aren't in the know.
Mm.
And why it would work on Tatooine in Act 2 because nobody knows who they are.
It's a dumb risk, is what I'm saying. Is like, even if you
Mm.
thought, there's a good chance no one will know Padme's first name, sure, but why risk it? Why not give her a random name while she's undercover? Like that defeats the whole purpose if anybody knows even basic knowledge of Naboo.
Objectively speaking, I agree with you, but it's done for storytelling purposes, I think, so that Anakin and Padme have a relationship, so that they're on a first name basis going forward, and we can have them be familiar with each other for the rest of the movie. At least that's how I feel it works. But I sort
think
of
there were better
objectively,
ways of doing it.
yeah. But the whole here's the thing, and I'm going to bring this up to you guys because I've always felt that it felt a little weird starting the movie with the Trade Federation being the antagonist or being the puppet for Sidious and his plans. Do you think they were solid as the paper villain of the movie with the droid? Because the droids became iconic. Trade Federation droids, battle droids, they've all become excuse me, they become iconic visuals. But with God, what's the freaking Viceroy's name? Viceroy
Was it Newt?
Newt Gunray. Thank you, Newt Gunray. With Viceroy Gunray, they come off. My problem with the Trade Federation is that they get a little too comical with being afraid of Sidious and being afraid of Maul. And this is you will not get away this time, Queen Amidala, whatever. I'm not going to try and do a Newt Gunray voice. It's going to be terrible if I try.
It's really bad.
It would be bad. Yeah, I'm not going to do it. Listen, also it would be racist. Let's be
Would
honest.
it be?
They were Asian. We knew it in 1999. It's like, these are Asians.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never once thought that. I knew the whole what's his bucket Wada was Jewish, but I didn't know about the Asian.
Oh, we were making fun of that in 99. I was like, damn, these guys are Asian. These guys are Japanese. We were making fun of that in 99. Anybody across both chats, and of course I forgot to say hail to everybody across the chats. Sorry, we dove right in. Whoever was there, we were all there. We all knew that they were.
Maybe you're just racist.
Well,
No, he's right. I agree. I did know as well.
Yeah, everybody
You just know.
I've never once thought that.
No,
yes, you're
I'm
right.
with Jed on this one. I didn't
You
know that either.
sweet summer children. You sweet summer children living in
Oh, the movie is older than me, so I have a good excuse.
But I mean, yes, and Watto, he's definitely hardcore Jewish. He's definitely hardcore Jewish. But I always felt that one of my criticisms I have is I felt as though Maul didn't get enough due. Now, of course, we know that Ray Park was the physical presence, and any of the voice work was a dub because that's not his actual voice. So I guess that's how they worked around it. They didn't want to dub too much of dialogue for him in there. But I think the movie would have served better if we gotten a little more Maul.
I believe they cut out a lot of Maul's because I think they filmed more of Maul, but then at the editing stage they did take out a lot, and in part to make him more mysterious, I guess.
Okay. Well, yeah, that was the point. That's obviously they decided to make Maul this. Once he's introduced, he's the presence, he's the hunter, and it works. But I wanted more, which kind of in the end made me dislike the way they bring him back and treated him in Clone Wars, because I was never a fan of that. I didn't like his return.
It absolutely shouldn't have come back. I hate especially the way they brought him back, but I do like a lot of the stories he had in Clone Wars. I might rewatch it because it's been years and not like it, just like what happened here with Phantom Menace. But as of right now, that's what I remember.
My biggest problem with his stories is that it's tied to the destruction of Mandalorian source material and lore. That's a problem, and
in his later stories,
that eats at me. All right, so we get.
While we're talking about Maul, just real quick, I do actually love the first time we really see him make a decision for himself. Is he sees a random kid walking through the desert, and his first thought is, "I'm going to run this little bastard down," like without even thinking about it. He's
actually really like that scene, though. I do like that scene because he comes in and you get. It's our first real duel of the prequel trilogy. It's brief, but you see Qui-Gon is pressed. It's an open thing, and also Maul's not fighting at full strength. He's only going a single saber on it. So I always did like that scene, and you get the feeling that Qui-Gon knew at that moment that Maul was a better fighter than he was, because I get that feeling. But let's dive into let's dive into the second act, and in doing so, where even though I feel the second act it drags on a little bit, it slows down, and it is a little rough because I'm going to say this. You guys might be angry at me. At least Jake Lloyd's Anakin is a little cringe at times. His little kid Anakin is a little cringe.
Yeah, there's a bunch with that. So first of all, like, I do love Jake Lloyd. I love him in Jingle All the Way. I think Jingle All the Way is a perfect role for him. Rewatching it, Jake Lloyd's performance was what stood out to me the most, is the cringy, like you said, cartoonish earlier, Jed. For me, it was Anakin above absolutely anything. Now, what's interesting is I was watching like the behind the scenes, you know, that famous like George Lucas behind the scenes where they interview people and all that stuff. Well, they actually show the castings that they were considering, like the last 3 for Anakin. And there was another choice besides Jake Lloyd that I actually thought was better.
Really?
There was another boy, and he was very confident. You could tell that he was trained really well for acting. But I think his delivery, because he did the "Are you an angel?" Delivery for the casting thing, and it was too confident. And I think they went with Jake Lloyd because he's very innocent in this film. And without going into the other films too much, it really adds weight to Anakin's story, seeing how innocent and kind he is in this movie versus how he grows on later on. So I think they went with Jake Lloyd because of the cheesiness and because of his innocence. And I think it does work as a whole, but I have seen a better casting for Anakin, and I'm surprised they didn't go with that kid.
I think his moments are best when he's being sad, honestly. His best moments is when he has to leave Shmi. And it's it is heartbreaking, and realizing he doesn't want to go, doesn't want to leave because he's been all excited and realizes, wait a minute, I have to leave. And then that's setting the stage. And whatever you want to say about performances, this and that, George Lucas still does give us the story of Anakin Skywalker here. His departure was grounded in fear, right there.
Mhm.
He's afraid to leave his mom. He's afraid what's going to happen to her without her, and that is the seed for everything. When he's on Coruscant and they're testing him, we sense the fear in you, and he lies to them point blank. I'm not afraid. No, you just lied because fear, and that is the kernel. That is, even though later on you could say Darth Vader is filled with rage and anger, but the core of Darth Vader is a scared little boy that never got over his fear, and that is the kernel, the seed with which Sidious nurtured the dark side taking root in him. And I think in that is where, if we're going to talk about Jake Lloyd's performance, he nails that part right there. He gets it, and the fear comes across. The rest of it, like you said, it's a little clowny, a little cringy,
It's
Mhm.
corny. And you're talking about that scene where he's leaving Shmi.
Yeah.
That's actually the moment that pulled me out of the movie a little bit, and I didn't like it
Really?
watching it back this time, because he's just like, of course, he is excited to be like, I'm going to become a Jedi, and he's like super stoked, so he's ready to go. But you would think when he's leaving, he would think about his mom a little bit quicker. And he spends more of that time being excited about the prospect of leaving than actually caring about leaving his mother until the very end, when he's like, wait a minute.
Mhm.
It takes way too long for him to be like, oh, so me and my mom are going, right? Like, he doesn't really have that moment until after he's...
He shows more worry about leaving 3PO up front than he does his mother. Like, the scene with Shmi is obviously more remorse and whatnot, but he thinks about 3PO way sooner than he does his own mother.
No, I agree. And watching that back, I didn't realize, like, I think Attack of the Clones, and they actually do a better job of painting that than
And
that Shmi scene in Attack of the Clones is
and
great.
Yes.
I bring this up now because if you want to read some stuff that has some really good Shmi stuff, Goes to Tatooine is basically it's a nice little Han and Leia adventure right before the Thrawn trilogy begins, but they're on Tatooine, and during this swim, it's Leia coming to grips with who her father is at this point. She's still keeping that under tight wraps at that point in the lore. And during the hunt for the painting they're trying to get their hands on, she comes across Shmi's diary from this moment in the story, and it starts with Shmi commenting while watching the pod race happen, and her fear and this and that, and then it follows her along. So Shmi is so directly tied to, as I said, Anakin's fall, the root of everything. And again, I mentioned earlier, we have to keep a tight leash not going to the next movie. That's why you watch these two movies and you read this book, and when Anakin goes to the Tusken Raider camp and finds her in her final moments, that is when the fear becomes the anger and the rage. And we'll touch on that next week when we get to it. But I mean, but Clifton, the whole time on Tatooine with Anakin, how do you feel about Anakin's introduction in general? Because we know it's coming. This is because everybody who saw the posters back then, and I had this poster.
Yeah.
Jake Lloyd walking and the shadow of Darth Vader behind him.
That's a great one.
It is a fantastic poster. But Anakin's introduction, do you feel it worked overall? Or now Jed doesn't like coincidence. We know this. But this is Star Wars.
It's inciting incidents, though. This film is the inciting incident of all six, so it would be okay in some instances.
But it's also Star Wars, and the Force is coincidence incarnate. It pushes things into place. But it's the Force. The Force wills it. The Force guides it. But Clifton, how do you feel about Anakin's introduction overall? This about him being there suddenly when they walk into the Watto's workshop.
I don't mind that at all. I mean, he gets introduced, and he's there. Yeah, he's a slave boy who works there, and they found out that he's good with repairing stuff, and so it's fine. I also even like the his "Are you an angel?" thing. It's a little cringe, but I do like it. And yeah, just what the issue that I have is, like, afterwards when he gets to go home and he sees them again and, oh, do you have shelter? You know, and like, yeah, sure, you can come to my house. I'm like,
that's a little weird. That
do you invite strangers to your house?
Well, he had seen Qui-Gon's lightsaber at that point, so he knew he was a Jedi. And still, though, that always gets like, why are we going? We're just gonna invite. And his mom's like, yeah, sure, come on in.
And
he's not even concerned.
Yeah.
She needs to sit down and have the stranger danger conversation with him again.
Why does that come across weird though? Because I consider it just like in the nature of Anakin and Shmi how good-willed they are. So they would take care of somebody, and they knew that they couldn't get to the ship in time. So Anakin doing that just like shows his innocence at the time. I think it actually illustrates it well.
I don't feel like Shmi is portrayed as an overly optimistic and goodwill person. Like, she's way more practical than her son is. She has, she recognizes the world that she's in, and she's come to accept that. And if you're living in this Tatooine where it's entirely rife with crime bosses and just murder and mayhem and slavery, you'd have a stronger degree of stranger danger. And she just comes across as a very practical person, where like she's accepted that her life sucks, but she's going to do the best she can for her son. But I can see Anakin doing it because he's an idiot. But Shmi, I feel like she would have a different reaction.
Well, go ahead.
I kind of compared to my mother. Like, if I would have brought home 2 adults and 1 teenager, like, my mom would have been like, who are these people? Get them out of my house. Like, let me at least tell me about them before you just invite people over.
Yeah.
Like,
what I get out of the most of this is whenever I watch it these days, I watch the character interaction, and this is the first time we get Padme doing stuff. We get more Qui-Gon interacting. And let me ask you this: do you guys think Qui-Gon knew the whole time that Padme is?
Not with the way he looked at Obi-Wan when it was revealed later.
You see, I thought that's a look of knowing, and Obi-Wan's the one who's surprised. I always get that Qui-Gon is like, yeah, I knew the whole time.
I saw the movie 2 days ago.
His reactions the entire time don't come across like he knows the.
Well, like how he's arguing with her. He's always.
See, I think that's him being a dick. I think that's Qui-Gon being a dick, going, "Well, the Queen's not here, is she? But you are here. But I'm going to do it anyway." I always came across to me as him being a dick.
Maybe.
I always took that line literally. I never took that line as like him winking at the camera. You know.
Yeah, I always felt it as though that he's basically letting her know that he's aware. Because here's the thing: remember, Force. You can sense somebody's feelings, and when he met her as the Queen, actually no, he never met her as. Ooh, you know what? Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah,
when
I
he
don't think
first
he ever
introduced
did.
him, it was Keira Knightley Queen, not Padme. Unless she had one, you know, I was playing Final Fantasy 14 when I was watching it the other night, so I might have not been looking at the screen. But when they're talking to her on the ship, I don't remember.
That's Keira.
It's Keira the whole time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Padme doesn't become the Queen again until Coruscant.
Okay.
From because the switchover happened when the invasion started. That's when Keira took the role. So the moment the droids are occupying Naboo is when it's Keira, and until Coruscant, it's Keira.
Something tells me I think he knows.
Keira's the Queen far longer in the movie than Natalie's, far more.
Yeah, I suppose I had a feeling he knew.
I think I saw an interview that Keira Knightley and Natalie Portman didn't actually know until the end of the movie who was the real Queen.
I've never heard that. It's
kind of a weird thing.
It's a little odd.
George is known for messing with his actors, though.
True.
I could believe it.
What I do enjoy even though Act 2 does drag me, I enjoy the character interactions because you have Qui-Gon. This is the first time in a movie we get a Jedi Master out in the open doing Jedi Master stuff. So Qui-Gon is laying the groundwork for what a confident, in control Jedi Master is. Not Obi-Wan in hiding, not Yoda in hiding, but a Jedi Master doing stuff. And I'm going to drop this question now because I think it's the appropriate time. Because he's in this movie. Does Anakin go dark side if Qui-Gon doesn't die? Because I have always held, and this might be this might be an argument better saved for 2 weeks from now on Star Wars Day stream, but I'm going to do it now because it's the movie. I always feel that Qui-Gon would have been a better master, that Obi-Wan was not the best master, Not only because I always do bulk at the end of a movie. You just passed your trials and you're given a Padawan. That doesn't make sense to me. And whereas Qui-Gon had been a master for a very long time, decades, I think he would have been able to better shepherd Anakin through the things that make him go dark side. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I'm more of the camp that he wouldn't have gone dark side if Qui-Gon stayed alive, personally. And part of what feeds into that, not to speed ahead to the end of the film, but I always
Oh, it's
sit on
fine.
the
We jump around, you know that. It's okay.
I sit on the point where like Obi-Wan, when he sees Qui-Gon die and then he's coming in and he's super aggressive. And I feel like that's giving him almost giving in to the dark side a little bit himself because he's so enraged by seeing Qui-Gon die. And I
Okay.
always sit on that and think,
I do
is
want
it
to talk
just that
about
he
that.
was he just like watching for long enough that he's like, I need to go and fight for my life? Or was he like fighting out of anger? And if so, wouldn't that be leading to the dark side in the way that
I
he's fighting?
definitely do want to talk about that because not sort of debate, but I've had conversations about that in the past, especially that moment. I know exactly what you're talking about. But I mean, Jed Clifton, do you think Qui-Gon would have? I mean, that changes the story, obviously, but I think it's a good question to ask. Does Qui-Gon's understanding of the Force and it being a better teacher, being calm, not basically being a parent to Anakin, or a brother? Because there's the thing, in Attack of the Clones, Anakin referred to Obi-Wan like a father to me, but then in Revenge of the Sith, we're brothers. I think Qui-Gon's detached nature as an experienced Jedi master would not have allowed that kind of attachment. And listen, I agree. I disagree with and that's the reason the Jedi fall. And we'll talk about that in Revenge of the Sith in 2 weeks, that they were too rigid in their dogma. And that Luke's new Jedi Order, embracing attachment, was the way to go, because then you weren't surprised when the emotion hit. But Qui-Gon was a good detached master where he understood how to make it work and how to teach how not to let the fear, the anger, the aggression take hold, how not to go too far ahead, how to remain in the present, not get too far into the front. How do you guys feel about the thoughts like that?
Yeah, so I think Qui-Gon definitely knew how to deal with that better. Cause I mean, I'm a little bit of a fan of the um Jedi Apprentice books. Like I liked, and I learned about Qui-Gon Jinn. He had someone he had loved, fell in love with young, and lost her, and just like he went through these emotions and everything, and he was in a dark place for a long time, and Obi-Wan actually kind of helped him out of that darkness himself, because he had to take care of a Padawan. And yeah, I think Qui-Gon would have just been more of a father figure instead of a brother. And I think that's what Anakin would have needed, was someone to tell him, like, okay, I understand you have these feelings. This is how to deal with them. Here are the tools you need. And just worked on it better. And yeah, like you said, Obi-Wan was just too inexperienced. He was just a Padawan himself, and now trying to train someone who's already being hyped up as the chosen one, which probably also shouldn't have happened. None of the Jedi should have been like, they should have, of course, in the council chamber talk about, yeah, we think he's the chosen one, but like, don't let him know. And no, honestly, like it gave him arrogance, I would think.
Okay.
I also think like in the movie, it's clear that Obi-Wan doesn't fully believe in it the same way Qui-Gon does, right? Where Obi-Wan says, they all see it, why don't you? Pretty much to Qui-Gon, like, why don't you see the danger of Anakin as well? So I think like Obi-Wan took him on as a necessity, but he might not have believed as deeply, at least in the beginning, in Anakin as Qui-Gon did. So Qui-Gon could have prevented a lot of things because from day one he was on board with Anakin, whereas everyone else wasn't.
And that's the thing. Obi-Wan, he was never fully committed to being a mentor, and it was more because when he's arguing with Yoda at the end, I need to keep my he cared more about keeping his promise to Qui-Gon than actually in the beginning, it seems to than being Anakin's master, because he wasn't. I mean, he's a master. When we get to Attack of the Clones, he's a full-fledged Jedi Master at that point. He's graduated to that level. He's been called that. But I would say for at least probably half of that 10-year period between the two movies, he's a regular Jedi Knight. And I will give George fault for that, because it creates a system that leads to the problems that we will see in the Clone Wars, where Anakin he didn't have any business having Ahsoka as a Padawan. It never made sense to me that George decided to have Jedi Knights be masters. It never made sense to me about that.
I can understand that. 2 years of my life, I really went into studying, learning about knighthood, like medieval knighthood, right? And a regular knight would have done that, not just like if you're in a knightly order, like it wouldn't just be the masters or the grandmasters. It would every knight who had passed being a squire would have been required to have at least one squire, good or bad, however it turns out. But
it's the inexperience that gets me. He literally just completed his trials, and we'll talk about that towards the end, what the trials mean, because I've always had a problem with that, and and it's a what if situation. Would Anakin have fallen or not? I mean, Jed, how do you feel?
I actually believe that it wouldn't have changed all that much. In fact, I think it would have been worse if Qui-Gon had been his master.
Okay.
Most importantly, probably because he believes Anakin is the chosen one. When it came to Anakin, Qui-Gon was always very blinded to him, very much like he's the chosen one. I'm going to do whatever I can for him, to the fact that he believed in him too much that I doubt he would have even considered that it was a possibility that he would turn evil. And so that would make him complacent, I think, when it came to more personal matters, because he's the chosen one. I'm just supposed to shepherd him along, but he's the one teaching me. That's
so
the
blind spot.
Absolutely a blind spot. I think that's probably the most important one, but there's other things as well. Anakin's nature is still very much to be afraid, and he'd still lose his mother. He'd still fall in love with Padme and have Sidious's influence. And Qui-Gon interacted with Sidious and had no inkling. So
nobody did. That's the beauty of Palpatine.
It's true, but I don't know if he would have been able to counteract Palpatine's influence any more so than anybody else. And you don't most people, at least, are more willing to confide in a brother figure than they are with a father figure. So Qui-Gon might have seen to Anakin as an unattainable or uncommunicable figure that he wouldn't want to communicate with. He obviously still didn't with Obi-Wan either, but I see it more likely with his personality to relate to Obi-Wan better.
I don't think Anakin would have developed the same hatred for Qui-Gon that he developed for Obi-Wan.
It would be different, but it would, and there's obviously justifiable ways. Like, hey, you expected too much from me. You told me I was the chosen one. That's too much pressure to put on a boy. You made me have to rebel to feel like myself. Like, there's still an avenue to turn into hate, like it ultimately did with Obi-Wan.
Okay,
and I think the hate with Obi-Wan is ultimately born from him falling to the dark side more than anything that Obi-Wan actually did or didn't.
And paranoia. Again, 3 weeks. We'll get into that when it really hits the fan on that one.
Yeah, but I think it would actually be substantially worse if Qui-Gon had stayed.
That's interesting. You see, I've only had this conversation a couple of times with people. It doesn't really ever come up. So that's why I really wanted to bring it out there. And you make some fair points. I still feel as though there was a better chance for it not to happen, because Qui-Gon is a better teacher. He understands the Force, because Obi-Wan, when it comes to being a Jedi, he is a combat Jedi. He's a frontline Jedi. He is what we call a guardian. He's the guy who's out there on the front lines doing it. He was supreme when it came to combat of that era. Obi-Wan, one of the best. Qui-Gon was a teacher, a leader. He was philosophical even, and he understood the avenues of the Force better. Hell, Qui-Gon's the first one. Again, jumping ahead. He's the first one to figure out how to detach himself from the living Force and become separate, have his consciousness return, than just being swept up and waiting to become part of life cycle again, as it were. All right, so we're on Tatooine. I like the Qui-Gon talk this and that. Padme, just flat. Period in this movie. And listen, I got this out there. I did not swoon over Natalie Portman like everybody else did back in the day. I did not swoon. I still don't swoon. So maybe I'm not
definitely not today. As a 9-year-old boy, yeah, I had her poster up next to Britney Spears and Shakira.
See, my posters were Cindy Crawford and Kathy Ireland.
Well, I think Natalie Portman, of course, did a better job in the sequels, but in the next two. Sorry, sequels.
I know
has
what
a
you
bad connotation.
Okay.
But I think her casting in this movie was a mistake, mainly because of how young they wanted Anakin to be. We all obviously know that in the movie she's 14 years old, so their age difference isn't that
just
weird.
5 years.
Yeah, their flirtiness is it's kind of okay, and then once they get older, obviously they're both adults, and that's fine, and that's a close age gap. But because they cast an adult actress with those scenes with the boy, that's led many people to believe it's uncomfortable. Like, I know
the groomer attacks.
A ton of people don't know that she's 14 in the movie, so people think, "Wow, this is really, really creepy." And so, if they wanted Anakin to be so young, they needed someone younger to play Padme.
22, 23 at the time, right? That's what she was around there.
Yeah, Kira was 18. I know that.
Well, I know the story. She still had to have her mom on set. Kira Knightley had to have her mom on set until most of the filming. She turned 18 during filming of Phantom Menace, because a couple years later, there she is in Black Pearl.
Pirates.
Yeah,
just such a good movie. Yeah. But yeah, I think just Natalie looking like an adult turned a lot of people off. Like, people still call it a groomer movie. Like, there are people I know who call it the P word Star Wars film.
I mean,
it's not
there are
true,
people out there. But there are people out there who just claim the entire Jedi Order is kind of
what?
Yes.
What?
I mean, they've been reading too much on the Catholic Church in the last few years.
All I gotta say is
possibly yes.
If you knowing the lore, she's 14 years old. He's 10 years old. Or 9 years old, because he's 19 or 20 in Attack of the Clones. I always kind of get that rough. There's nothing wrong with it. There's no grooming going on there, and it's one of those disingenuous arguments when people attack the movie, attack the franchise over that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, it's not attacking it. It's just feeling uncomfortable without knowing better. Like, no one's like, "Oh, it's a bad movie" because of it. Just her casting rubs people in a weird way.
See, it didn't bother me because she was older. It bothered me because I wasn't interested in her as an actress or a character. And also, you got to understand this. I'm coming into this movie not knowing that I'm going to be seeing Luke and Leia's mother in this, and period. Because you can sort of see it right there. The Black Fleet Crisis trilogy, which came out about 2 or 3 years before this. During that one, Luke goes on a journey to find his mother's origins. He didn't go anywhere near Naboo because George hadn't figured that shit out yet. He hadn't decided to make it that. So I had already gone through sort of a story where Luke's trying to find his origins of his mother, and here we go. Here's his mother, and I realized, wow, those books are completely loose, and then they are one of the weakest trilogies in the entire EU. The Black Fleet Crisis is not the best, but I didn't know going in. So and honestly, even in this first movie, I didn't realize that was going to be Luke and Leia's mom, because I had no idea she was going to come back in the sequel.
I didn't see them starting a love interest at that point. Like, they were friends, and Anakin, knowing that he might not see his friend again, of course he would, make a little gift and say goodbye and stuff like that. Like, yeah. So I don't see it in this movie at all.
I mean, Kate, going into the first time when you saw it, being your well, wait, I can't answer the question because you had no idea of Luke and Leia at that point, so never mind.
Yeah, I had no idea. I had no idea. I mean, I guess relationship-wise, it seemed one-sided. It seemed like Anakin felt more about the relationship than she did. So I guess that would be the only thing I pulled away from it. I didn't really get the angle that she was interested in him remotely.
People will probably say that smile during the victory celebration that they share, people say, "Oh, look, there they go," and it's like, no, that's they're mimicking Leia smirking at Han and Luke on Yavin. They're mimicking that, or she smirks at Han. She's kind of nods at Luke, but you know what I'm saying. That's just George doing what he did, honoring his own
Poetry, it
moments.
rhymes.
Yeah. God, the stands have ruined that phrase.
It was always ruined.
Yeah, but at least when you did, they ran it into the ground. Now everything rhymes now. Everything rhymes. Nothing is. I'm gonna get angry. I want to be happy. Anyway, let's talk pod racing. That's pod racing.
Can I ask a quick question before we get to the pod racing?
Yeah.
So, this felt weird to me since I was a teenager, but more so this time is obviously I don't know the geography of the universe as well as Adam does. He probably has the map memorized, but
Sort of.
just from a geopolitical standpoint, Naboo seemed more like not a central system, but a very influential system. Is it that close to the outer rim that
mid-rim?
Because they're like, oh, Tatooine's one of the first nearby planets that we can get to and make repairs. It feels like those planets have to be pretty close to make that work. It's fine, coincidence wise that happens to be Anakin because that's the inciting incident. It just feels weird that Naboo and Tatooine are so close together to make that.
I'm not gonna look up a picture. I'm just gonna open up a quick look at galaxy map here. Now here's Hut space. There's Kessel. Peak. Oh man. Yeah, all right. No. That's no. I'm completely wrong section, aren't I? Completely wrong section. I like this map, but I also hate it because it's kind of tilted. So everything kind of gets mushed, and I always have a hard time finding it. I see all the names I know. Because here is, this is Hut space right here. Here's Hut space. Here's Hut space right here. And here is the Republic over here. This is this is the New Republic, but Old Republic and the Empire is here.
Yeah.
And you have Outer Rim, Mid Rim, Core Worlds, or then Deep Core Worlds, like where Biss is. And you get towards here, and Tatooine, is it even on here?
Should be an important one to add.
I know, but we're so far removed from it. You see, the thing about real Star Wars, eventually, they stop going to goddamn Tatooine.
Because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. Luke's speech in New Hope is like, if you want to be the farthest from the center point of the universe or whatever, there should be nothing going on.
Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. Here's Tatooine right here. It's Tatooine right there.
Okay.
Now, I don't... And here's Naboo. So here's Tatooine. Let me go white. Let me go full screen. Maybe if I go full screen, maybe I do that. So here's Tatooine, and here's Naboo. I'm terrible at this. Are you guys see it now?
Yep.
Yeah. So they aren't that far apart, but
okay.
It is Naboo is on the edge of the mid rim. You see right here. Here is mid rim. It's right on the edge of mid rim, and Tatooine is on the outer rim. And right next to Ryloth, where all the Twi'lek whores come from. Anyway.
At least they thought about it and put it geographically close together. It does still feel weird that such an influential planet is that close to the outer rim.
But it's mid-rim. It's mid... Oh, I don't know if it's influential. It's a part of the Republic. And that's literally the edge of Republic space right there. Because then... Now, Hut space used to be much larger. It is diminished by this point. But, yeah, so it wasn't that far. They could get there. It's not like when... Han and Leia leave Hoth and they escape the asteroid belt and they're heading to Bespin. We did the calculations when we did that last year. We did Empire. That was like almost a 3-month journey for them on sublight speed. This is clearly probably they're probably on the ship maybe for a week is my guess.
Yeah,
they weren't that far out. But bring it in. I got it before we go too much further. Now. Okay, you don't get to answer this because you didn't know this, but when you first see R2-D2 appear in this movie, I smiled like, oh, there he is. The best droid, the best robot, top 3 easy in science fiction history. Because you got to remember, George originally said that a lot of these movies were supposed to be seen through the eyes of these 2 droids, R2 and 3PO. Now 3PO, he's a cameo in this movie essentially, and we get the reveal that Anakin is the maker. Thank the maker, only in the OT. Well, Anakin made him. Of course, he's going to get his mind wiped. Doesn't matter. But R2 is literally there the whole time. R2 chronicles Anakin's entire journey. He's there here in the beginning when they meet. Because R2 goes to town with Qui-Gon and Padme. R2 is with Anakin when they go back to Tatooine in Attack of Clones, and R2 is there when Anakin falls. And for parts of the Clone Wars that we can say are legitimate, the 20% that works, R2 is there for all the major moments. R2's the chronicler of all of this. He's seen it all. So much so that there's a point later on in the series where Luke comes to the knowledge that R2 witnessed everything. And he's trying to tell R2, can you show me some records of Anakin? And R2 says, you don't want to see this shit. You do not want to see this. Because Luke takes a look inside R2, and R2, in all this time, he never had a memory wipe, not once. And R2's circuits are so fused together that he essentially does have a soul. And that's the uniqueness of R2. And that's why R2-D2 is one of the greatest characters of all time. And I thought it was smart for George to introduce him here. So how do we feel, those who could actually say this from the beginning? I'm not gonna let that one go for a while. How do you feel about R2 introduced right away and being hero right away, saving the ship while the other astromechs get wasted on the hull of that? How do we feel about R2 and then persisting through it? How do we feel, Clifton?
I smiled. I loved it, seeing R2. One of my favorite robots of all times in all mediums. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
Jed, is this too much coincidence for you?
I mean, like I said, this movie especially can get away with a lot of coincidences that others wouldn't be able to make, because it is the inciting incident for all the subsequent films.
You understand? I'm doing it to be a dick today.
I do, but it still does come across as a cliche and kind of just like member. I saw that a lot in this movie. It's not quite Force Awakens level bad, obviously, but still like member. It's like, yes, I remember Jabba the Hutt. I remember this. I remember that.
The other two movies are a little bit better about not pushing what we eventually call member bearers. Let's be honest. This is 1999. You haven't had a live action Star Wars movie in the theater. We do not count the Ewok Adventures. Those are straight to VHS.
Yeah. It was the longest gap.
16 years.
Movies.
16 years, like 83 to 99. So 16 years since a live action Star Wars movie, and I can forgive R2-D2 member berries. I can forgive any member berries in all this. Like right away, lightsabers. Right away, Jedi. Right away, Palpatine. Right away, I can forgive it because it was meant to get you back in, meant to get you excited. And listen, Kay showed off all the merch. They spoiled tons of shit with merch if you were keeping track of it back then. I didn't. I was in school and I had no money, so I wasn't busy. Oh, wow. That's a good mall. That's a good mall. That's really good. I like that. I didn't get spoiled at all, but they did what they always do. They released toy sets, merch, tons of shit was spoiled. So everybody, they really wanted you to feel the Star Wars again, and it worked. It worked. We talk about hype and hypnosis. Everybody was on board. Now, afterwards, the debates began, and it would go on for the next 4 years. But that's a different story. We'll talk about that in a few weeks, really. But so you have all that kind of stuff, and I'm okay with it. And R2 works for me. But that's why I want to talk. Let's talk about the pod race, because you can't talk about this movie and not talk about the pod racing. I didn't see that coming the first time around, because you wouldn't even think that there's a race to be had in anything. But it wasn't my favorite thing originally. I've since grown to enjoy it mainly because of the John Williams score. And for those who don't know, we will talk about the score at the end. We saved glorious discussion of soundtrack to the end. The John Williams score is what pulls me in now. And also, I do like the idea where Qui-Gon kind of just hints, trust your feelings, trust your senses, because you're getting that the Force is giving you that glimpse of what might happen, that feeling. Go with it. And the only thing that bugs me is how blatant Sebulba's cheating is. That's the thing that bugs me the most. It's like he's just no one's paying attention.
No
I
one
know.
notices. It's like
Yeah.
how there's people everywhere.
Yeah,
Well,
and
I don't
no
think
one
they
sees them
care.
happen.
I don't think people care. This is one of those races. Like it's the same thing happened with cross country races across the United States. You see cheating all the time, and that just made it more entertaining. So this is a crime world. I'm sure they all seen it and they don't care.
But several people that were on Anakin's side, like that were in his, his group, were
Mhm.
all there, and not
Yeah.
one of them saw it. There was like at least 5 people that were on Anakin's side that were in
Mm.
close enough proximity. That's the part that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, them not saying it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure somebody else saw it and didn't care.
Well, anybody that bet on him probably wouldn't care.
Mm.
But it just that's the only thing that bugs me. Sebulba's blatant cheating, and not just on Anakin and everything else. He
does a lot of rough stuff. But I have other issues with it. Like, of course, the one person that Jar Jar gets into a fight with is the primary antagonist of the pod race. That's a coincidence that I find unbelievable. But the other thing is, why would you jump from, oh, I don't have any local money, to let's put a child in a death race? This is a crime world that has interactions with the rest of the galaxy. Of course, maybe I can get Watto, who never leaves the planet, not accepting Republic currency, can buy that. But there's not currency exchange. These are people who have to do business in the Republic.
The Hutts. Well, I'm gonna check.
I can see someone like going to a local spaceport, and someone's like, "Yeah, I'm getting ready to go to galactic
only one
space."
spaceport. Mos Eisley is the only spaceport. Well, there's only 2. Mos Espa and Mos Eisley, the only 2 spaceports.
This is a crime world at the center of a crime empire.
All right.
Jabba's portion of it.
Jabba is
It's
one of
still-
he is one of the most powerful Hutts out there. That's true. But
Which makes it a
it's
very
all
central
black
location.
market. But it's all black market. It's all criminal.
All money has value in a criminal market. Like if we went to, I don't know, I'm gonna say a random planet or a random country. If it's incorrect, it's not the point. If we go to a random Taiwanese black marketplace, we're gonna be able to trade U.S. currency. We're gonna get shit on at the exchange rate. It's gonna be a terrible exchange rate, but they can always use that.
All right. I'm gonna defend this from a story perspective. They want you to understand that there is no law here, because at one point Shmi says the Republic's not out here. There's nobody can help us here. And I think that's just part of reinforcing that the Republic not only is out there, that it's also in decline at this point, massive decline. The Republic has been existent. This is where also there's a little bit of a lore issue. Got to understand, George was still kind of filling in some blanks. The Republic had been in existence for more than 1,000 years. It had actually been in existence for several thousands of years, because Revan takes place 4,000 years before this point. And that, so I back then they were strong, and even back then Tatooine was still Hutt space. Way back during Revan's time, during the actual Old Republic, where the Jedi are much stronger and had a bigger influence and range. But I really think they wanted to start stressing at this point, or George wanted to start stressing, that the Republic has no weight here, and that means their money is worthless, their influence is worthless. And I think it was all a part of just stressing how they have no stake in anything out there. No one cares what the Republic wants.
They're close enough to the Republic that Naboo is within sublight speed. It doesn't matter that there's no law there, obviously, but if you're that close to another nation, pesos still have value in Texas. Not the same that they would. There would be an exchange rate issue, but I can't believe that it's just the extremes. They didn't even try to find someone to exchange. They went like, oh, Watto's not taking our money. Let's enter a child in a death race.
Well,
That's
that
like
I do have a
0 to
problem with
1,000.
right there.
That's
I do have a
just
problem
0
with that
to
because
1,000.
There's when they're convincing Shmi to have Anakin go it. One minute she's like, "Hey, he can't do it." Then no, my son's the only one who could help you. It was on a dime turn.
Yeah,
on a dime turn. It's like, wait a minute, you rolled over on that one pretty quick, Shmi. Come on. But
and
I
I
see what you're
couldn't
saying.
believe that Qui-Gon would put Anakin in.
He's no, I believe that
It makes sense that Qui-Gon did it,
Yeah.
in my opinion, because he already knew that Anakin was special.
He's trusting the Force, and also we've already done, and I guess the first time we're going to talk about it, we've already done the midichlorian count.
Oh God, don't the midi.
No.
When are we addressing that? Because
We can address it right now. We can
That's
address it
the
right
Are
now.
you
worst part of this
sure?
movie.
Are you sure he did that test before the dinner where he brought it up?
Mm-hmm.
We
Because
brought
when
up
he-
pod racing?
Because right before the pod race, because wait,
No,
I thought
he
they.
did it
I thought
after
they
they
brought.
agreed.
It is no, you're right.
Yeah.
It's after. It's after.
Yeah,
they
the
were
pod
building-
racing did
as
come
they're building,
after.
as they're building
Yeah.
everything, then he gets injured, then he wipes
Mhm.
the thing. So that's
Yeah,
after
you're right.
they agree.
Yeah, okay. You're right. So I'm wrong about that, but still, he's trusting the Force at this point. So I agree with Kay.
He senses
Qui-Gon,
something in him. He at
knows
least
it.
knows at
Which
this point
is
there's something
another.
going on.
This is another good reason why Qui-Gon wouldn't have made any difference. He trusts that kid too much. He would have gotten him killed
No.
during the
Okay,
Clone Wars.
Like, if you want to go back to this whole, like, would Qui-Gon make a difference? He would, because maybe this is me taking the Clone Wars cartoon too seriously, but Anakin goes into the arms of Palpatine as more of a father figure, especially you see that in that cartoon. And I feel like if Qui-Gon was still present, he would be more inclined to go to Qui-Gon as a father figure. It's like he's looking for a second
agree
father
with that.
figure, and Obi-Wan's not that person,
Mhm.
so Palpatine becomes that person to him.
Yeah, but
That is a good point.
So all right, the word that should not be uttered has been uttered. Midichlorians.
Worst
This
part.
is one of the dumbest things George ever came up with, and they in the following movies he ran away from that real fast. They mentioned it, I think, once.
Would they run away faster from midichlorians or Jar Jar?
Both.
I think midichlorians is worse than Jar Jar. And
It is.
I do as
Midichlorians
well.
is worse than Jar Jar
but-
because it diminishes the mysticism of the Force by making it physical and biological.
Yeah.
It's like Dragon Ball Z stuff, like, over 9,000 power level.
Yeah. Well,
And don't they
and
say
then
that, like, even Yoda doesn't have that much or something?
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
says I've never
what?
They
seen the
do say that.
concentration
Well-
of midichlorians like this count ever. In any
and they use that to justify some nonsense in Rise of Skywalker. Is that since the midichlorians exist, you can genetically change how many midichlorians someone has. It's almost like injection of the Force. Get some midichlorians,
Disney
jab it at
Star
someone.
Wars has been using midichlorians as an excuse to do all kinds of shit. I've learned recently. It's ridiculous. Midichlorians were a mistake, and I think George knew it by the second movie because of the pushback and also the discussion around it, legitimate discussion. How are you doing this? Why you're doing this? Little microscopic things that are speaking to the Force through you to Force. No. Midichlorians never happened.
Midichlorians are the powerhouse of the cell.
The
powerhouse of the Force.
No.
I hate it so
Midichlorians never
much.
I know. I hate it. I don't like it. I've always hated it. That to me back in the day, that was the thing that made me the most angry. Way back then. Midichlorians made me the most angry because it made, as I said, it made the Force a little less mystical. Because this is space fantasy, this is science fantasy, not science fiction. Because I hate midichlorians.
Yeah, and then with the Force, right, we're talking about how Jed doesn't like coincidence. It's like, it feels better if it's coincidence, but now you're saying there's a measure to that coincidence with midichlorians almost. Like, it just makes it so much worse.
And beautiful thing is that even when this stuff came out and the EU had to adapt to changes that George made with the prequels, they had to change some stuff. I've documented it a few times already. Midichlorians never mentioned. And remember, George approved everything. So if George said, you know what, let's not talk midichlorians ever again. Let's pretend it didn't happen. Let's keep going forward.
I may have gone too far in some places.
Yeah. But all right, so the pod race thing itself, overall though, aside from some of the small problems with it, it still is a fun thing, and everybody enjoys it. At least I feel everybody enjoys it. It adds appropriate tension to the second act that wasn't there otherwise. I think that's a fair thing to say.
I like the pod racing. It was a lot of fun, and I got the pod racer game.
Everybody bought that game.
It was so much fun.
That was for
it
the
was so
kids.
much fun.
All the kids loved it. I didn't care because I was a grown ass man. But I didn't. I was not interested in that. At that point, I'm sitting there going, "Yeah, that was great." I see KOTOR coming out. That's what I see at that point in time. That era. It's like, oh, here comes KOTOR. Now you have my attention.
My KOTOR shrine.
Yes. So it works, but it adds the necessary tension to keep the second act going. Because here we have a point getting to it. Now we have it, but then we get onto the third act. And Jed, you said the third act does hold up best for you in this movie,
mainly because there's less talking.
But I feel the third act, we're moving all the pieces into play, and now you get to watch Palpatine start to maneuver. Oh, Chancellor Valorum, he's not that strong. What if we did a vote of no confidence? Oh, I just happen to be one of the primary contenders for Supreme Chancellor. Isn't that great? And I like that. I like the political maneuverings because Ian McDermott now gets to actually be more than just old man at the end of Return of Jedi. Now he gets to actually do something. And I like the maneuverings, I like political stuff. And I like the idea of him just being Mr. Nice Guy when in fact I am a Sith Lord to beat all Sith Lords at this point. And also I do like seeing Coruscant because this is the first time we don't count that snippet at the end of Special Edition. That don't count. This is the first time Coruscant is seen on a grand scale. And it's one of the best evidence to reinforce, oh, George Lucas didn't like the expanded universe. Motherfuckers. He took that from the expanded universe. Timothy Zahn created Coruscant. And George said, hey, I like it so much, I'm gonna put it in the live action stuff. So we get to see the Senate. And even though there is one thing in the Senate pissed me off, I hate seeing goddamn ETs.
I knew you were gonna say that. I had a feeling.
I hate it every time.
It pulls me out a little bit too.
Because they're in our galaxy.
Yeah.
Not galaxy far, far, but that's George.
But you get the joke. Yoda was in E.T., so playing the joke back.
Yeah, but it just
with
a universe that you pay attention to so deeply to have something that pulls you out. Like didn't they reference God at one point, and then that was a big deal too, or something?
Gods. They do a reference religion at one point.
Not in this film necessarily, but in Star Wars, I remember that, or like hell or something. There was a line that
they
Han
say
Solo
hell.
said.
Oh, Han Solo's "I'll see you in hell." Yeah, they say hell all the time. Yeah. But I hate seeing those ETs, but I do like seeing the Senate because that's the Republic. Yes, it's fallen apart at this point, but there it is. You realize how many civilized worlds there are, and it allows you to go back to A New Hope and realize that right there at the beginning of A New Hope, Palpatine had literally just dissolved all of that. That's it. We're done. And now the Moffs are going to control their own sectors. We're not going to even listen to people anymore. It's done. It's over. And at this point, he's playing on the Senate because I am the Senate. He's playing on it. He's manipulating it. And I love it and I do like it how he manipulates Padme. Do you see right there? Here goes all his strength. Now what will you do? It's good. I like it. That's good. That's why I say this movie works for me because of the performances and some of the character work. The characters that if you know who they are going in, it's the proper nostalgia bait. It's the proper type of member berries because it's doing what it's supposed to remind you.
Evolution,
yeah, it works. And let's talk about the Jedi Council because I'm talking about this now because this is about to become a point of contention in current day discussions. Do you think that the Jedi Council was resistant to not to Anakin? We're talking about Qui-Gon's report of Maul. Do you think they were resistant or were they receptive to what he was saying?
Resistant. And this is actually one of the biggest reasons I hate Mace Windu is because he's like, oh, well, there can't be like Sith. We would know about it. And it's just like Mace Windu's disbelief the entire time and the way that he doesn't trust Anakin, which I know is not exactly what you're talking about, but just these scenes, as soon as they happened again, I'm like, oh yeah, this is why I really hate Mace Windu. He annoys the crap out of me. And he's like a huge part of the council. He's a huge part of why I don't like the council.
He would have been Grand Master after Yoda. He would have been the next one in line because of his strength and his experience.
No, they seem very like, no way, and like skeptical, and they don't seem like they really trust in what they're being told.
Yet they do say go investigate. They don't outright they may be resistant, but they don't outright dismiss it. And
they do say go investigate. So they are open to the idea that it was something. They are very against it being a Sith, but they're open to enough to say, hey, give us more information. We don't know enough right now.
Yeah. It's not outright, oh, you're stupid. There's nothing out there. Go away. We're now in the next 30 days, or probably next 2 months, because it's not going to happen right away. We're gonna see if Disney Star Wars decides to have Yoda be aware of the bullshit they're gonna go perpetrate in the Acolyte, which means then will they taint this movie having Yoda know that there was a Sith presence prior to Maul and Sidious. And that's I don't want to break too far off and talk Disney Star Wars because it's them it's them attempting to poison the well, poison the source material with their own bullshit, and that's one of the biggest contentions that is probably going to be talked about in the next month and a half, 2 months when that garbage comes out. But all right, so I mean, Clifton, how do you feel? Do you think they were resistant or just dismissive? Or
they were definitely resistant, not dismissive. They were like clearly, Qui-Gon fought someone on Tatooine who was strong in the Force, but yeah, definitely resistant. I do have a question because you brought that up with Yoda. Was it Disney Star Wars or was it before Disney took over that the idea that Yoda actually knew the entire time what was going on? He talked to the Wills.
The Wills never came in. No, the Wills don't exist. That's something George had on his idea list that he wanted to bring in while he was still in control. The Wills never happened. That's not a thing. That was George wanting to do it, but he never got around to it. So the Wills don't exist. Yoda, canonically, by the time you get to Attack of the Clones, they know there's a Sith Lord because of Dooku, who reveals that he's a Sith, and we know he's Darth Tyrannus. We know
they were resistant to that for a while, though. Just thought he's a political extremist, not a Sith.
That's different. That's different. We'll get to that next week. But when it comes to resistance to the existence of the Sith, I think up to that point, that's their arrogance that they think it's over. And Yoda, canonically didn't know because going back to the term period of time, the Sith had laid low. The Darth Bane, when he institutes the rule of two, it's not to wage all-out war. It's to go into hiding, and it's to get stronger and consolidate and undermine and set the stage. And eventually, at a point, a Sith Lord, the strongest of strongest Sith Lords, because that's the whole point of the rule of 2, or 2.5, as I like to say. Every time a new Sith Lord rises to power, they will have contained all the knowledge of their master, and then they get stronger, learn new things, and then their apprentice learns it all, takes them over. So it's literally a cumulative effect of power and strength and knowledge of the dark side and the Sith alchemy and Sith arts. That's why they wouldn't have come out of hiding, because it wouldn't have been the time. That's why Palpatine says, now is our time in this movie. He says to them all, now we're going to now come out of hiding because this is it. Generations of Sith Lords, our line. Because got to understand, the line of Palpatine, it goes all the way to Darth Bane. It is the line from Bane to Palpatine. And Tenebris to Plagueis to Palpatine. Now, Palpatine broke the rules. Let's be honest. Palpatine breaks the rules because at that point, he has Darth Maul. And he already has, I think, Dooku at this point, too, or at least he's scouting him at this point. And when he has Dooku then had Ventress. And then at the same time, Palpatine's scouting Anakin to replace Dooku. So it's not, and of course you guys can understand, there is such a thing as Project Necromancer. Doesn't exist. Palpatine was always transferring his soul to clone bodies during and after the Clone Wars. And I'll save this for Revenge of the Sith, this point for when we talk Revenge of the Sith. But Palpatine had always decided that he was going to be the Sith Lord forever. He was never going to let one of his apprentices take him over. In fact, I wager he took such an interest in Anakin because before he became Darth Vader, before he became cybernetic Darth Vader, because remember, Anakin is Darth Vader before Mustafar. Palpatine had always the plan to take over Anakin's body, to put his soul into there, and then
it was conceived by the midichlorian, so it's the perfect vessel.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. If you go back to the Plagueis book, Anakin only comes into existence because Palpatine and Plagueis were messing with the Force, and they tipped it too far to bring it out of balance completely. So it's an issue of Palpatine wanted it to end with him. He wanted to be the end all be. He wanted to be the Omega of it all. And I say that literally, not talking about stupid Disney Star Wars Omega. He wanted to be the end of it. He wanted to be the pinnacle, never going beyond him, always having more power. And he would never have allowed, and the Sith never would have allowed anything to happen to stop that up until that point. That's why everything to say that Yoda might have known and the acolyte, that's why that's the fundamental flaw in what we're going to discuss with acolyte in 2 months or a month and a half when it starts. It's the fundamental flaw of that. But we got way off topic there, even though I enjoyed it, nerding out like that. But we get now to the third act, where why I got this question though. Why is there only one Trade Federation ship left in orbit of Naboo? When we start, there's like 2 or 3. Why is there only
There
one?
was way more than 2 or 3 in that opening shot.
There was a blockade
lot,
fleet. Yeah, there was a full-on blockade fleet going on there. Why they haven't won anything yet? Why is there only one?
Well, so Anakin can blow up one and save the day.
That tactic.
I actually have a question about that doesn't make sense to me. So when Anakin gets in that speeder before he flies up, whatnot, he says that the autopilot is taking over and taking him to the Trade Federation station. Why was the autopilot programmed to do that? They were breaking into the hangar bay to steal those crafts.
I think the autopilot was homing in on the rest of the squadron. That's what I think.
That's a really weird thing for an autopilot to do. Like, if this were a planned assault, I could see it. It's like, all right, that is our target. We're going to our target. But they wouldn't have time to program an autopilot sequence because they were breaking into the hangar bay to steal those planes.
Well, I have no direct answer for you. I've always thought
I think it's just lazy to get them out there.
I mean, R2's a better hacker than that, or Slicer. Sorry,
it would be kind of funny if R2's like, we're gonna get in the fight, and he was pretending it was the autopilot. Like,
I wouldn't put it past R2.
I think that would actually work very well with his character and be funny and whatnot.
But R2's a good slicer. He probably he got it done pretty quickly. Now, let's talk the space battle first, then we'll talk about the stuff on the ground. It's an okay space battle.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay.
I do like the
personality.
Go ahead.
I do like the Naboo fighters.
I was going to say some people have a lot of love for the Naboo fighters. I'm not really.
I'm more like their sound. I really like the sound effect for them. But.
See, I'm an old school X-Wing guy. And it's
the enemy ships definitely don't have any identity whatsoever. Like, they tell you.
They flush them out later. This is the first introduction of droid stuff. I mean, those are vulture droids that we see later on. They're just locked in formation. They're not sitting around looking at shit. I attribute this also just George. He hadn't thought it all through yet. It says, hey, let's just get it out there. Let's go. Boom. Let's have it fly around. Yeah, I feel bad for those Naboo fighters or the Naboo squadron because, man, they sucked. Those guys sucked. They had no strategy going up against that Trade Federation ship. They knew their technology, their weapons wouldn't penetrate the shields. So what are you going to do? Your fighters. They had no bombers, no Y-wings around, no B-wings around because they haven't been invented yet. So no bombers to take care of this stuff. So I don't understand what they thought they were going to accomplish going up there. That's my problem. And Anakin and Jed, look at this, man. He gets lucky. Getting very lucky. Hangar. That's lucky. That he gets
none of it was intentional. Like in the pod racing stuff, you can clearly tell, all right, he knows what he's doing. He's using the force. That's what's making him so good in this situation. This space battle is very much he just
spin. That's a good move.
He's totally out of his depth, not doing anything in accidents his way. If they'd shown him like using the force, like same with the pod racing stuff, if they'd used that type of approach to it, it would have been better. This one's just like, oh yeah, accidentally went right to the reactor.
It's so freaking flimsy. I try to ignore that part of the film. I think it's the worst part of the last act. Like it doesn't make any sense. But like the pod race is supposed to lead up to that.
It makes sense though. The pod race makes sense. The space thing does not. You're absolutely right. And it's just it's not, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work at all. And you get to now we'll do the 3 parts. That's at least one. The battle with the Gungans and the droid army. That is legitimate, even though I've always hated the Gungans and their bombas. I hate those fucking bombas. I do.
I hate everything with the Gungans, especially the green leader dude. Like, is he not a Gungan? Because he has completely different physiology.
Boss Nass.
Boss Nass. He's just he's just fat.
He's fat enough that his nose it just disappeared.
I guess. older.
That's the signature thing with the Gungans is the bills.
Maybe
the bills fall off when they get old.
Listen. You know that sometimes species have higher tier genetic classes. I guess he's a higher tier genetic class. Listen, Gungans suck. I'm sorry, they suck.
Do.
They suck.
Yeah.
And their battle against the droids, while it is legitimate and it's played out well, I still hate it. I'm sorry, I just do. I don't like it. Clifton, you were gonna say something?
No, I was just agreeing.
Okay. It's just I hate the idea of the balls. It's just and Jar Jar is just unbelievably retarded in that battle. Listen, we can handle Jar Jar up to that point because he's just it's dialogue, it's stupid. But how is he not dead in that battle?
And he's trying to catch the ball, and then he like conveniently throws in the right place by it bouncing. It's like,
and he's kicking a droid. And
yes, that was so bad.
No.
Yeah, how can you do that without being Darth Jar Jar?
Stop it! I will kick you from the stream. I will kick you from the stream. Don't mention that. But he does that, and then they had to do a nut landing joke. Really, George? He lands on the cannon of the tank, and it's like, oh, it's like, no, really, no. But they're a distraction. They're not there to win. They're there as a distraction. They're there to get the troops out of the capital so that the strike team can get inside and get to Viceroy Newt Gunray. And
that always bothered me a little bit real quick with the Gungans it was relatively difficult for Natalie Portman or Padme to convince them to join the fight. There was that conversation. It was fine. But once they hear the plan, I'd imagine the Gungans would at least be like, hey, you're sending our people to die. That is their whole point. They're not trying to win the battle. It's just like, you guys are there to get slaughtered and get as much distraction as possible. It makes sense tactically. It is a good plan, but I imagine that they should have at least resisted a little bit.
Yeah.
I agree. As soon as he is like, yeah, sure, we're in. We don't mind. I'm like, what? Just like 10 minutes ago, you didn't even want to be near these people. And now all of a sudden you're like, yeah, sure, we'll die for you.
Now, this is going to be a weird reference, but I'm playing the Mass Effect trilogy for the first time. And in the first one, there's
you are?
I'm in the second one. I'm absolutely loving them. But in the first one, there's a choice like this that happens. You're on this planet. You're getting ready to assault one of Saren's bases. And you got this local militia who's going to help you. And they're going to be the distraction while you sneak in and take care of things on the inside. But they obviously don't want to go and die. So the compromise you make is splitting up your team, giving one of your guys to that assault team to say, hey, we know that this is a suicide mission, but we're just as invested in this as you are. So if they did something like that, like, hey, Gungans.
Well, that's the choice. That's the choice of the game right there. You're going to choose. Jen,
exactly.
Who did you choose?
I saved Ashley.
Thank you.
Good man.
Milk Toast Caden needs to forever be dead.
Oh, I barely. It was that mission when I realized, oh, is he actually a character? He's just sort of there. It's like, is this a decision?
Yes. We all love based Ashley.
Yes. Hey, Ashley, she's not a racist.
She is annoying though. I'm full team Liara.
Mass
she's
Effect 3
only
Ashley,
into a little bit.
She's a cameo too. Mass Effect 3 Ashley is such a great come around of her entire arc's character. I
love Liara though. Liara is my girl.
I like Liara. Tally's my sister. I tried romancing her once. It didn't work. It just didn't work at all. Could do it. We got to talk Mass Effect. Now that you're playing it, I get to talk Mass Effect with Jed now that he's played it.
It's really. And I'm watching The Expanse for the first time through all of this and absolutely loving it. It's a good sci-fi time for me. But with this, I think they should have made that decision. But with the Gungans, it's just like, hey, we recognize that this is a suicide mission. We recognize this is hard for you. Let's have the captain of the guard go with the Gungans or something like that. Like use some of their people, use some of the Gungans with their assault, just so it's like, hey, we're not making you do all the sacrifice. We recognize that this is difficult.
Nope,
we're going to share.
And what's the return nation putting Jar Jar in charge?
I think that's a joke. Like he's just messing with them because you see how much he giggles when Jar Jar passes out. I don't think he's actually in control of anything.
But the other captain says, "Don't give up, General Jar Jar." Me give up, and that's it. He had command.
That's so much worse.
It's all right. They were distractions though. They are a distraction, and they're the Gungans. Let them die. They're worthless.
Yeah.
But now
Kill
we
them
get
all.
to the meat. We get to the meat, which is honestly, this is the best part of the movie. No one can argue this. I don't think this is what
Duel of the
captured.
Fates is incredible.
It's captured everything,
Yes.
and both parts of Duel of Fates, whether it's the ascension to try and get to the Queen's chamber where Gunray is, or the actual duel between Qui-Gon.
I find the
Obi-Wan.
Gunray stuff just being fine.
But it's still good because
it's okay.
Well, it's showing intelligent tactics, is what I'm saying.
Sure.
They're not muscling through. It's shit, man. We're going to use attachments. We're going to scale the building. Is that, and it all comes together nicely. And of course, it is Duel of the Fates, one of the greatest single tracks John Williams has ever written, and he has the Mountain.
Yeah.
And I'd say it's top 3 just duel too, choreography wise. I have to put Return of the Jedi #1 with Vader and Luke, and Mustafar, of course, but Duel of the Fates.
Mustafar's a different thing because Mustafar, as we'll talk about in a couple of weeks, is 2 people who know each other very well, which is why that fight is choreographed the way it is. This is a Jedi, a master and his apprentice, or master and his apprentice going up a guy who they have zero knowledge of skills, because the Jedi have stopped using double-bladed lightsabers at this point. It's not something they use. It just isn't. It's not active use. I mean, that one retard in Clone Wars, the Jedi who went bad, he was using them, but they're not general use in the Jedi Order at this point. So,
what do you mean the retard that went bad?
That 4-armed guy.
I know who you're talking about, but I'm asking the retard part.
I hate that guy. It's Clone Wars. You know my feeling on it all.
I think that's one of the best episodes. There's a lot of really bad episodes, but I think that's one of the best ones. That and the Mortis Blade arc, I think, are some of the best.
Mortis Blade. Oh, that is truly good. That's it at its best. That's George directly involved too. Saying, hey, Dave, go take a coffee break. I'm going to do this one. But Duel of the Fates. So let's talk the actual Duel of the Fates. Jed said it. The choreography I mentioned earlier. Ewan McGregor, Liam Neeson. They put in the time, the practice, the effort so they could keep up with Ray Park, who is the star of this fight. Ray Park is the star of this fight. And I'll let you guys go first. I've been nerding out over things. Kay, how do you feel about this fight?
Whenever anyone that I talk to that is a trilogy purist gets mad at the prequels, I say you would not have this fight without the prequels. This justifies their place in the Star Wars universe. It's the best part of the prequels. It's an amazing fight. Ray Park is unmatched by anyone in any fights ever in film, in my opinion. He is like the best fighter I've ever seen. Yes. And the fact that the other 2 could even keep up with him shocks me because of just how crazy that was.
He probably dialed it back a smidgen. Fight. Probably dialed it back just a smidgen so they could keep up. But you're right.
Yeah. No, it's insane how they can even keep up with it. But to me, that is the best fight in Star Wars. I know there's other fights that are more emotional and carry more weight. For me personally, that is just the best choreographed fight. That is on an actual practical level the best fight. And it's perfect. And even like when they start to slow it down, the intensity at every moment, you are fully in it. No matter what you're doing at that time, you're glued to the screen. And I just think it's extremely powerful.
Clifton?
Yeah, it was a fight that didn't carry emotions, but through the actions of how it went was like until the end.
Yeah.
Until the end. Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And just watching that unfold and just how overpowering Maul was, just
you bring
a
that
lot
up.
of fun.
It's fascinating because here you see a master and his apprentice who are in sync. Yeah. There's a one moment where Obi-Wan does a fake and Maul goes for it, and then here comes Qui-Gon in there to engage. They were working. It's what Anakin always tried to do. I'm sorry, what Obi-Wan always tried to do with Anakin, but they couldn't quite get it because there was never that complete trust there. Obi-Wan completely trusts Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon completely trusts Obi-Wan. And if they had been able to stick together as they progress deeper and deeper into, I guess it's the palace reactor is what this place. You know, I've never really given it much thought. I guess it's a reactor.
You don't want to use Clone Wars, do you?
I guess I've omitted that from my memory.
The Clone Wars says that's a trash chute, and he fell down to a trash barge, which took him to a trash planet.
Oh,
and then he built the spider legs.
But then why was there shielding in front of a trash chute?
Exactly. Well, the
Yeah,
shielding
it
never
doesn't
made
make
sense to me,
sense.
regardless. But
Yeah, that's the thing. It's creative set brain, but if they had stuck together, they beat Maul. If they had stuck together, Qui-Gon is a great Jedi Master, but he isn't a great warrior, and Maul was stronger because he gets him with a freaking hilt thrust to the
That's
face.
what bugs me so much
That was a
about that
bad
fight.
moment.
He
That
stuns him.
moment. That's
Yeah.
all it takes for Qui-Gon, and then like when Obi-Wan jumps in, he gets hit with a similar move, but he totally like is able to deal with it, and that's something else I sit on besides the earlier moment I spoke about. It's like,
Well, we're going to talk about that right now.
why
We're
is
going to
that?
that right now.
Why is it that Obi-Wan is it because Obi-Wan witnessed it happen to Qui-Gon, so he knew it was coming? Was it so like such a dirty trick that Darth Maul did that Qui-Gon didn't expect it? He expected more like fair fight. That's what I don't get, is why that stopped Qui-Gon.
It's better explanation than what I've heard. You know, the whole poetry it rhymes thing. I know several people who believe Qui-Gon legitimately died same way Obi-Wan did in New Hope.
No. Obi-Wan already knows he's going to come back as a Force Ghost at this point. Qui-Gon doesn't know he's going to be able to separate himself from the living Force. No.
Yeah.
It's so dumb, but
that is
it
dumb.
makes me laugh every time someone brings it up.
No. All right, but here's the thing. Kay brought this up earlier, and I want to talk about this now. A former friend of mine, always used to talk about this scene where Obi-Wan watches Maul kill Qui-Gon. He's like, no! And then he has to wait. And we talk about this all the time. When they're on Coruscant and Qui-Gon wants to take Anakin as his Padawan learner, they say, you already have a Padawan. No, Obi-Wan's ready to take the trials. What are the trials? We didn't know this at that point. What are the trials? The trials are essentially a Jedi Padawan needs to be tested whether or not they can resist the dark side. Can you resist the temptation? You're going to be put in a situation where you are stripped down and broken to your bare essential knowledge and feelings and all this type of stuff, and you will be pushed to your limit. And this fight turned into Obi-Wan's trial, which is why Yoda elevates him at the end of the movie, because right then and there, he sees a man who has been a major part of his life die murdered in a duel. Not murdered. It's a fight. I'm not gonna say murdered. He dies in this fight. And yes, a lightsaber through the chest kills you. Fucking Reva.
That only one person.
Disney doesn't count.
And yeah. So here's that. Now there it is. Obi-Wan sees it, and Kay, you're right. That initial look is anger. Obi-Wan is filled with hate and anger. You've killed my master, my primary master. And as it starts back, when we cut back to them after we get the skip to Padme and everybody going to the gunnery, you see Obi-Wan. They sense it's about to happen. He ignites the lightsaber, and he does the jack up, jump up and down. My friend always used to love that. Always getting psyched up. And here it is. He comes in, they launch, and it's a fierce one-on-one fight there. Obi-Wan is focused. He splits the dual saber in half, and it's a boom, bang, pow. Kay, you're right in the beginning. He does give in to anger right there, but there's the trial. He overcomes it. He focuses. He keeps it in check, and he's able to get past it and win the fight without giving in to anger and rage, which is the same as what Luke does. Now, here's where you want to say poetry. It rhymes. Luke versus Vader in Return of the Jedi. That is Luke's trial. He gives into the dark side, the hate and rage, to beat down Vader in that moment. And when he's about to give the finishing blow, he stops and pulls back and doesn't give in. Obi-Wan doesn't give in. And that's why I don't think he used the dark side to win. He was about to, but he manages to rein it in. And that's why he passes the trial. Go ahead.
I think he only gets a chance to rein it in because he's thrown into the pit.
You can say that.
It's very lucky for him that happened. Otherwise, he might have failed his trial.
He might have. That's a fair point. But the whole thing is the trial, and what matters is the end result.
Yes. That
he's able to focus. He's able to reach out with the Force and realize that he's lost his lightsaber. Now, Maul fucks up right there. Maul decides to be, I got you. I'm going to taunt you now. I'm going to slap this a little bit on the edge. I'm going to tease you and taunt you. I got you. He effed up because that gave Obi-Wan a chance to focus, sense that Qui-Gon's lightsaber is still in play. Now, I do have a slight problem with his Force pull-up. He has no real footing. I don't know quite understand how he gets the traction for that force leap over Maul. It's a bit of a
all in the
problem.
arms.
All in the arms, upper body, a lot of upper body day. Okay,
Yeah,
all in
He
the arms.
forced
okay.
his underwear, gave himself a wedgie. That's what he was forcing.
But he flips over and he gets Maul, and I'm agree. Maul dead. Maul had the high ground. Maul had the high ground, but he was arrogant. He had already seen the victory. I've won.
Yeah. He didn't see it coming, the move,
Yeah.
whereas Obi-Wan in the third one knew. And he's like, don't try. Like, he specifically knew what Anakin was going to do.
Yeah. And Anakin's arrogance. It's the same. Maul had arrogance there. Anakin had arrogance there. We'll get into high ground in 2 weeks. We'll get to high ground in 2 weeks. But that's so I agree with Kay. He was tempted in the beginning, but he passes it in the end. But it's a great fight. That right there, McGregor and Ray Park going at it back and forth like that. That is the most intense the fight gets. And you realize there's no music in that moment. It's silence. All you hear is lightsaber exchange. And that's, I think, what makes it so powerful and fun if you are a dueling enthusiast like myself. Anyway, so further comments on this part here.
So as a kid, of course, I knew Obi-Wan would survive, right? But I was also so upset that they killed Qui-Gon because, quite honestly, that was it. He's one of my favorite characters of all times.
Oh yeah. There's no,
and then later, of course, getting into more stories of Qui-Gon, and everything. Just
you want more Qui-Gon because also you like Liam Neeson. He's giving a good performance. You're enjoying it's what a good movie does with good story. You're engaged in this character. You like this character. We all like. Who doesn't like Qui-Gon Jinn? I like Qui-Gon Jinn. I enjoy Qui-Gon Jinn. I like because he's a good character. But and you also got to wonder, just to hypothetically, would he have been as corrupted by the Clone Wars as everybody else was in terms of being thrust into that war? Would he have taken an active part in it? Or would he have done like office work at the temple?
Would his master have gone to the dark side?
His master did go to the dark side.
Yeah, if he would have lived.
Oh, yes. Because and again, we're not talking. God damn it, I did it.
He did what again?
Again. God damn it. Other periods of the show, I know I said it, but it was a normal transition. That was
in context.
That was not. Shouldn't have said it there. No, Dooku, and we don't take into Disney's fake Tales of the Jedi bullshit from last year. That doesn't count. Dooku was always probably going to fall like that. He was always disillusioned because he was probably influenced by Palpatine in some way, shape, or form. So no, I think Dooku was always probably going to fall. I don't think. He's already Darth Tyrannus in Attack of the Clones. When he says, talk about next week, when he says, "Oh, I wish Qui-Gon was here." No, you don't. Qui-Gon would never have fallen to the dark side. Qui-Gon was a good Jedi. He was a poster boy in terms of Darth. Yeah, he was a bit of a renegade from the Council. We know that, but he didn't give in to what would say what the Sith code is. He believed.
He had a better understanding of the Force.
Yeah. All right. Well, end of the movie. We've talked about this part of this, so I'm going to wrap it up because I have my hard stop in 7 minutes. We actually went the full 2 hours almost here. So we of course now will talk about the score. No matter how I felt about it back in the day, the one thing I did go buy immediately was the soundtrack on these things called CDs. At one point, they existed.
What are those?
Big circles. They look like the video game discs we play now.
I'm not familiar with those either.
No, really. Fine. You wound my soul, Jed. You wound my soul.
Just for you.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, I went and bought that soundtrack immediately, and that soundtrack really is magnificent. The whole thing. Especially when you're listening to the credits and the final march of everything, how he weaves some of the music into some of the Imperial March music, and he does it even more in Attack of the Clones, and of course, Revenge of the Sith. It's all there on display. John Williams is the GOAT. Every time we bring up one of these movies, whether it's this, Indiana Jones, we talked about we talked about Superman, we talked about Memoirs of a Geisha. He is unique. and it always comes back to him at number 1, and everybody else argue for 2 and 3. Jerry Goldsmith, all that kind of stuff.
Ooh, Howard Shore is up there for me though.
But
He's
what do you
pretty
know
far
from
up there.
but besides Lord of the Rings stuff?
Yeah.
Silence
If we're
of
going,
Lambs.
if
Silence
we're
of
doing
the
single,
Lambs.
Silence of Lambs?
Yeah.
You're gonna.
I haven't seen it, so I can't say.
Well, I've seen it. I mean, means we have to watch
But
it.
obviously, Lord of the Rings above all of it.
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh,
By
but
a
I'm saying
country mile,
no.
yeah, yeah.
I'm not saying Howard Shore is not in the conversation of 2
Top
through 5.
composer.
But when it comes to scoring and the mountain of work,
John Williams
once
has
again,
the most consistency.
Yeah.
Pretty much
Yes.
everything he
Yes.
does,
And-
John Williams is iconic.
That's
Yeah.
why we say this movie. He had done other movies between Return of the Jedi and this, Jurassic Park, Hook, all those movies in between. But suddenly, for the first time in 16 years at this point, here's a new Star Wars music, and he just nailed it. We mentioned Duel of the Fates.
Yeah.
I don't have the words. It truly is. Without his soundtrack, each and every one of these scenes, this movie is elevated because soundtrack. It gets a higher score from me because, like we always say, the soundtrack elevates every single scene, elevates every single character. Anakin has a theme in this, and I know it because of that. I hear it in my head right now as we're talking. I hear the beginning of the pod race, during the pod race. I hear the battle against the droid army, and I hear it all. I hear all of the lead up to the final thing and the final march, the victory march. It's all great. It is just incredible, and he's John Williams, and he never failed. And up until only once did he kind of fail me, and I was like in the final Harry Potter movie. Failed me on that one because that just it didn't feel epic to me at all. But that's a different discussion.
He didn't do those, remember?
Damn it!
They used his themes. Yeah, you keep saying that, but
I keep making that mistake.
They
didn't
used
I?
his themes, but he didn't do it.
All right, we're done. We're done. We're getting out of here. I'm not going to wallow in my mistake any more than I have to. All right, anyway, seriously though, we do have to stop. I need to eat something before I go to the next stream. Anyway, all right, so guests, you get to score it first out of 10 because you are the guest. So Clifton, since you signed on first, you get to score it first today. So Clifton, what is your score out of 10?
I mean, okay, I'll be perfectly honest.
Remember,
I do have
you can balance objectivity, subjectivity, however you want to do it. We all have our ways to do this. So go ahead.
Totally nostalgia. When I was watching it 2 days ago, I felt like a kid again, being pulled back in. Just absolutely loved it. Of course, it has its problems, and we've talked about it here. I would probably like a 7.5.
7. All right. 7.5. So which one? Choose one. 7.5?
7.5, yeah.
7.5?
Good.
Okay, 7.5. Okay. K.
This is my favorite Star Wars movie. However, I understand that is a subjective opinion and not objectively that this is the best Star Wars film. I can step away and know that much. I would give this film a 7 on the objective scale, but the subjectivity, I'm giving it an extra 0.5 because I just have such a great time with it. So I'm a 7.5.
Okay. Now, since it is my week, I will go before Jed. Actually, technically, it is my week. So, Jed, you can go first next week. I have to be objective about this. And this movie doesn't exist in a vacuum for me. I've said what things I like. I love the main cast performances. I love Liam Neeson. Ewan McGregor, he's barely, Obi-Wan's kind of barely in it, so I don't really count this as a performance of Ewan McGregor. The next two is when Ewan McGregor really is on stage for this. I dig Ian McDiarmid, Return to Palpatine, and Sidious. Natalie Portman is wooden, so Jake Lloyd is cringe, and Ahmad Best is cringe, but it's not his fault, it's the character. I love everything about it. It still feels like Star Wars. No matter what criticisms you do level this movie, it feels like Star Wars. You see the galaxy out there. You see the technology, the worlds, the aliens, the Lucas aliens. It has that right feel. Even new ones when they're introduced, it has that proper Star Wars feel. Doesn't simply look like you went to a cheap Halloween store and grabbed a mask. Oh, look at the Star Wars alien. No, they put the time and effort in. Does Lucas make questionable decisions with his directly on this. Yes, he's not as hungry as he was, and he didn't have the people that kept him in check in the previous trilogy. So there are mistakes there, but the choreography is great. The themes work, politics, and the political themes that he starts to go into more. And remember, it's not political, it's politically themed. We didn't talk about that much because I didn't want to get into it. That's a different discussion. We could save that for in 3 weeks on Star Wars Day stream. It's a politically themed thing where we're going to talk about why politics corrupt, and those who are sometimes, most of the time, behind it are horrible individuals who want power and control. It sets the stage for this type of storytelling. I love the lights. Duel of the Fates, fantastic. Everything works, but in the end, it isn't top tier Star Wars for me. In it objectively, compared to even in the prequel trilogy, compared to Revenge of the Sith, it doesn't really. So I give it a 6 out of 10 because it doesn't quite. I enjoy it, but I'm not in love with it like I am still with, let's say, Empire Strikes Back, because I gave straight 9s and above to the OT last year when we did this. So Jed, are you look at that smile. He's gonna go lower than me.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I need to warn the guests here. If you guys haven't watched the show before or aren't familiar with me, I rate things very different than other people. I'm more strict with my numbering systems than most people. So I'm going to give a number. And if this were on your scale, obviously it would be very different. So don't go too...
Jed,
don't think too poorly of me.
I already watched you with Superman. I'm good.
Kay knows what it's like. Jed he truly is the objective side of it. So I'm usually a little more subjective than Jed.
Mm-hmm.
Jed is primarily the objective scorer. So understand that going in. Don't understand that he has a subjective score that he keeps in his heart. Understand that.
Yeah, keep it in mind. I hide it under a bushel.
All right, go.
But yeah, this is one of the first times on this show that I believe that my objective feelings is very close to my subjective feelings. I definitely didn't enjoy this as much as I used to or remember doing so. Revenge of the Sith is the only prequel that I would call good, and I have a very hard time saying which is the worst Star Wars film, either this or Attack of the Clones. I'm sure I'll make that decision next week once I have a little bit.
I'm gonna be a little rougher on Attack of the Clones, I think.
I don't know what it's gonna be because these two have always flip-flopped for me as the two worst Star Wars films, and yes, there are only 6, so they're bottom of the 6. I have to give this a 4 out of 10.
Okay. All right. Listen, I'm not gonna criticize anybody for scoring this low because I said these things don't exist in a vacuum.
Yeah.
That you have to compare it to the whole 6 Star Wars movies that exist, because there are only 6.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just anyway, that's it. I got a heart out now. So let's go around the horn, Sarah Farewells. And I will say we will be back next week with Attack of the Clones. So gear up for that one because we're doing Star Wars movies this month because I want to. Anyway, Jed, what do you got coming up this week?
Just regularly scheduled live streams. I'm sure you'll talk about Roundtable in a moment, but nothing set in stone. I'm sure I'll have to talk about Doctor Who at some point, but I have no intentions of watching it. So yeah, just check me out on YouTube and Kick at Hollywood Scholar.
All right. Clifton.
Yeah, tomorrow hunting Mustache Man over on Ryan's channel, and on Monday 5 p.m. Central I have my own Insert Culture where we talk about cultural things going on, usually topics that aren't really covered on everyone else's streams, so a little bit of a different thing going on there. And of course Friday on Friday Night Rumble. And yeah,
all right. And Melee K of Melee Games.
I am Melee K, one half of Melee Games. You guys have seen Melee James on here before as well. Where you can find us, well, right now I'm going to hop on another show called Fish Tank on Goes Nowhere Does Nothing channel. We're going to talk general pop culture, whatever. I don't know. It's always chaos. But tomorrow on our channel, Melee Games channel, we're going to be doing Star Wars Roulette. So if you guys want to see some Star Wars games happen, we're going to be spinning the wheel and seeing what Star Wars games we land on. It's going to be a good time.
Okay, did you get anything for the one good thing May 4th is good for? Did you get anything this year?
What do you mean? Like buying
Did
anything?
you buy, like anything was on sale? It's the only thing it's good for on Steam.
Owned
You already
most
got
of
them
the
all?
stuff we
See, I did
cared
get one
about,
game.
you know?
I got the one game I still needed for my own personal collection. I got Empire at War again. I finally had it again after like a decade.
See, that's the thing. It's like every time May the 4th runs around, you always buy something, right? So now
Well,
I came around. I'm like, I have what I want.
Yeah, it's the last one I really wanted though, because that is such a good strategy game.
Yes.
I love it. I'm gonna stream it once we're done with a few other games. I am gonna stream it again. So I love that
I will
one.
watch you play that. That's awesome.
Oh yeah. I haven't played it since the mid 2000s. So I am completely rusty on how to be good at that game. It's gonna be a shit show when I start it. It's gonna be horrible. But anyway, all right. So as for myself, if you find people, stick around. In literally 25 minutes, myself and Dermy Wormy, we will be tackling Doctor Who. It was bad. It's horrible. So you can see that here or on Dermy's channel. We will be simulcasting it as well. As for everything else, tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern, be right back here for Roundtable, where we'll be talking the week's events. And then Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern, Mellow Mondays. And the rest of the week, whatever it takes, all the things come up, I'll do my best to give you my opinions and how I feel on things. I want to thank both Melee and Clifton for being here. You guys are always welcome. It's always fun. Chat, thank you all for being here across both mine and Jed's channels. We appreciate you. We know that you guys are the only reason we get to do this. Your support is necessary, and we thank you for it. We appreciate it. So hit that like button, everybody, and we will see you guys next time. As I'm scrolling up, I wasn't ready. Okay, we're good now. So good night, everybody. Take it easy. See you next week.